What's up, everybody? Welcome on into One Soccer Today. Andy Petrillo, Gareth Wheeler, Oliver Platt, Jordan Wilson. It is a full house on the show today. Do you know what that means?
House.
That means business.
Can I
That
be
means
Danny Tanner?
we have
Full house joke.
Oh,
Full house.
geez.
Come on.
That is a way back throwback. Who's gonna understand that reference?
Way back,
Still
throwback.
popular. Still
Yeah.
popular today.
For us,
Yeah.
is a classic. Classic.
It was a classic. This is very true. Classic is Toronto FC. They're a classic organization. They've been around for a long time. They're an organization that has won multiple national titles. They've won an MLS title. This is a team that was once glorious, and now for the last few years, guys, not so much. And Toronto FC played their final game on the weekend. As we know, they are actually not part of decision day with MLS. They're a team that's not going to be playing when a lot of teams are going to be played and a lot of decisions are going to be made, hence decision day. And they dropped the game 1-0 to Miami. That was it. Nail in the coffin. The season officially over for Toronto FC. So not only did new head coach John Herdman and his staff not get a trophy for the team, even though they were in the final of the Canadian Championship, that of course went to the Vancouver Whitecaps. They now also don't make the playoffs. It was a horrible stretch for them near the end where they just picked up one win from 7 games. So they're on the outside looking in. Early off season for them, guys. Now they got to look ahead. So let's begin with some questions here about looking ahead. And let's start with the head coach, and that is John Herdman. And I don't know how you're feeling here, Wheels, but if you're, MLSE, are you giving John Herdman another year?
Based upon the play on the field and some of the cultural changes off of it, I think you can make the case that John Herdman deserves to stay and continue to see out this project. He took over the worst team in Major League Soccer, and there was a lot of work to do. I think that they would look at this as kind of phase one of a multi-phased approach in order to turn back, get back to respectability here. There are considerable roster spots that are going to become available with players coming off of the books and getting off of contract. So it's going to be a huge summer ahead just in terms of recruitment. But I do think that there's elements that are completely out of his control. And by me saying that he should stay, that doesn't take away his own responsibility and some of the failures. There had to be a steep learning curve here. He's never done this job before, being a manager of a club like this. He couldn't get the best out of his most important player in Lorenzo Insigne. The injuries were an issue, whether they were training methods or otherwise. He went with long stretches without wins. They went 7 games without a win. Found it really difficult to navigate through the Canadian Championship. And some of those relationships he prides himself on, I just don't think they ended up that great at the end of the year. With that being said, a new president is going to be hired at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. Does that president see things in a different way? Does he want to take things in a different direction? And then there's the investigation that's lingering over everything right now, not just the national teams, but John Herdman, the way that he's going to be looked at as well. And if there could be some sanctioning when it comes to his involvement or his participation, we just simply don't know where that investigation is at right now. So on the balance of it, if everything else comes out in a wash, yeah, I think you can make the case that Herdman deserves year number 2 with Toronto SC.
You agree with that, Jordan?
I do. I do. I think that I think that's very difficult for anyone if you're a head coach of TFC to turn this club around in 12 months. Like, they were better this season. Obviously, they were horrendous last year. But I don't think one coach could come in and be like, okay, now with that squad, how it's imbalanced, and I've preached about it for the past year, to go on and say, oh, you're going to go and be a contender. I mean, a big question, right, is the $15 million man in Insigne. And I don't know if there is a coach, if you put them in that position, that can get a player to be fit, can get a player to go and commit and score goals. Like, I look at it, and I'm looking at a situation for John Herdman, who kind of wears his heart on his sleeve and gave a lot. But I just don't know how much more he can get from this group. Like, what is a successful season with this TFC squad with what they have? I don't know if many people can get more out of them.
Okay. To agree that he should have another crack at another season. Ollie, how do you feel?
I think on a performance level, I agree with the guys that he's done enough to continue and to potentially get a crack at it with a better set of tools, so to speak. If they can make some changes to the squad, I do think their salary cap situation is going to be a bit better next season than it was this season. But that the performance side of it, strange as it is to say, almost feels kind of irrelevant to me, fairly or unfairly, because I think it's more about assessing both on John Herdman's side and on TFC's side and the front office side. Like, do you still believe in each other, right? Like, is that relationship still one where you want to move forwards? And there's just been a few little things over the past few weeks. Some of the comments Herdman has made, like he kind of seemed to want to explicitly point out how good a job the Whitecaps had done and Axel Schuster had done of recruiting, around the preferences of their head coach and getting him the squads that he wanted. There's just been some moments like that where I felt like there's been some pointed remarks made about, maybe what others have that he doesn't. So I'm a little bit kind of questioning, for some of the reasons that Will's outlined as well, is that relationship between him and Jason Hernandez and whoever comes in, whoever's going to be running the show at the top of the club, is that a relationship that's still strong enough to move forward here? If it isn't, then I tend to think in these situations it's better to cut your losses too soon than too late and let this thing drag out. But so that would be the question I have in terms of the job he's done. I think he's achieved about what he could have achieved with this group.
Yeah, I mean, his failures on the field, the second half performances, they conceded the second most goals in the second half of games. There just wasn't a plan B. He needs to do better that way. But to Ollie's point, there were times when Prince Owusu would have a big miss and he'd be looking up in the box, the management box, saying, "You didn't get me a number 9." Unfortunately, past mistakes kind of provided a weight around their ankle with that respect. And I just wonder how much further MLSE is willing to go right now. The ownership structure has changed at the club. They're still paying Bob Bradley. They're still paying former players. Like, it's just not a bottomless pit of money that, that Scrooge McDuck dives in and can, that's not the reality of the situation. I think that it would have to, something really would have to ignite or blow up for the club to say, hey, we're willing to pay another coach to go away. At this point, I just don't think that it's financially feasible. Unless.
Yeah. And I think like everything that we're saying here, but I think that's probably the big one here, Ollie, is the belief in kind of what's happening behind the scenes. And I think if I were to ask you, sure, they missed the playoffs and they don't win a trophy, but we do know that they finished better in the standings than they did obviously last year and the previous year. But if I were to ask you your general feeling, like, was there a real change? Do you feel there was a real change? Do you feel there was any kind of progress where you're going to look at that in the off season and say, okay, this is what we can build off of? Because I feel like there's a general kind of, malaise right now around it going, it feels like nothing really changed. It still feels like you have, other than Bernadeschi really turning things around, it's the same old with Insigne. It's the same old story with defense. It's the same old story with lack of, same old. And yet more was done behind the scenes. Again, I still think he'll be back another year, but I think he'll be on a very short leash, especially if you have a new president coming in who might have some other people in mind. But remember, he was given all the tools. He was announced as head coach and then didn't even, he was in the stands. He was given the luxury to watch and assess. Never in my life have I seen that in pro sports where a coach has been announced and then doesn't take the reins right away. He's been given every technological luxury behind the scenes. Guys, every time the camera pans to the bench, all the coaches are looking at iPads. Look up, watch the game. They're all looking at iPads.
It's an army.
They've been given everything at their disposal, where I think behind the scenes, MLSE is probably looking at it going, but we gave you a lot of things, and yet it feels like nothing changed.
But here's my issue with that, though, and I take your point, Andy, but to me, a lot of that is window dressing, and the most important factor in all of this is who's your best player, and we're going to get into that, obviously, but until that changes, I don't know, maybe you could bring in a really experienced European coach and they'd prove me completely wrong and turn it all around. I'm very skeptical at this point that, this group there's really much to salvage.
Yeah. I mean, what kind of grade, Andy, would you give John Herdman on the year that was? C-?
I'm in the C.
But yeah. I could give him that kind of grade and still say, well, you have to give him another year based upon the context of the situation.
That's a tick in his column.
Yeah, that's a bright spot.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think that the squad's good enough. I don't think the
No.
squad is
I,
anywhere good enough. So to Jordan's point, bringing another man, I think that I disagree with Jordan a little bit. I do think that you could bring in another manager that could maybe get something more out of Lorenzo Insigne, but you'd be just doing that to placate the player that's kind of taking advantage of the situation, hasn't proven that he is trustworthy at this point.
yeah.
So I don't think you can go on and do that.
Mhm. All right. Well, I'm just gonna hop to the big one here before I ask another question. Like right away, you just mentioned Insigne. So do you think, Jordan, I'll start with you. Do you think
Let's
Insigne will
go.
play another game for Toronto FC? I mean, we kind of asked this last year when
Yeah,
we
no,
knew they were shopping him around. There were no
yeah.
takers because that's a lot of money you got to pay him if you're another club. And TFC does not want to retain any of that. But
You know me, Andy. I always want to take one question and make it a two-part question. Do I think that he will play another game for TSC? Yes. Do I think that he should? No. The
Hmm.
$15 million man has shown me countless times where his commitment lies. And it's just not for TFC fully. And I'm talking about on a player standpoint. Let's just put the money aside. I know the money does factor into how much you expect of a player, but you cannot tell me that this guy is fully bought into the project and moving forward. His actions tell me otherwise. I think Insigne cares a little bit more about Insigne, and he shows that. I don't know him personally, but I'm looking and watching about how he acts in moments, how he hides when his team's behind, how he's pulling beards, how he can't really push into another gear. That for me, that says all that I need to know about him moving forward. But 15 million is a number I wish I had. Let me tell you, all you guys would get one. I'd give you all one of that
yay.
15 mil. That is a pretty penny. I just don't know how you're getting rid of that guy in these circumstances with 2 years left on his deal. But I don't think he should play, but I think he will. I think we'll see him playing for the Reds next season.
Because who's going to take him? Not just at that price tag, Wheels, but it's the fact that he's not playing. He's injured, right?
And when he's on the field, he's just not putting in the work rate. He's not being productive. KJ, kind of documented last night on match night from a statistical perspective, but we see it with our playing eyes. And unfortunately for some people, I think it took the messy jersey swap after the final game to be the last straw. I mean, we've been there, done that. We've been saying this for quite some time. This is your most talented player. On paper, this is the best player that you have, but the production, the commitment, everything that you want out of your best player isn't being delivered. And Toronto FC fans compare him to another Italian in Sebastian Giovinco, who wasn't only productive, he led by example.
Mhm.
And this player simply doesn't do that whatsoever. He needs to go, but how do you make it happen? It's not just signing a check and tell him to go away, because then you're going to have to replace him by spending more money to bring in another top player in this team. I just think at this point, with 2 years to go left on his contract, you're stuck with him for next year again. That's why John Herdman will dance around it a little bit, and he's tried to do it. He called him his Ferrari. At the end, it turned out into a broken down Honda Civic. That's what it is. It's just, it doesn't look good. It doesn't roll. It sounds like crap. It's not drivable at this point. So if they can find a way to see him off, they will. I'm just not sure what that looks like.
What do you have against
we
Civics?
love Honda Civics. We love Honda Civics.
Broken down.
That is the poor man's Batmobile right there. I love a Civic.
Growing up in high school, man, souped up Honda Civics. You got yourself a man who's driving a souped up Honda Civic.
Souped up. It's a translucent roof or transparent roof. The sun's
and
coming
it
in.
always smelled like coconuts. Always smelled like coconuts. So you're saying Wheels, yes, he's going to be playing, because where is he going to go, right? So next 2 years, you're saying yes, he's going to play another game
next year.
I'm saying
Ollie?
yes as well. I don't think he should.
I'm saying no. I think they have to buy out his contracts and swallow it. And like we've talked about this before, but at this
Big
point,
spender, Ollie.
I mean, I would say, like, let's remember who we're talking about here with MLSC and who owns MLSC. Like, I know that this can't happen again. This isn't something that you can budget for with TFC, and the person who signed this contract has been fired. But there is the financial resources to be able to afford this. It's not nice. It's even if it was the Leafs or the Raptors, this wouldn't be a nice thing to swallow. It's going to be a big buyout, but I think it has to happen. I don't see why you would continue to pay him the same money anyway to do what he's done for the last 2.5 years for the next 18 months instead of cutting the cord now. And I understand what Will said about having to replace him, but I think you could sign a DP for $1 million, 1.5 million, and he would be a dramatic improvement on what they're getting from Lorenzo Insigne right now if you get it right. So he has to go. I'm with what KJ said last night. I don't think he can play another game for the club.
Dangerous game to play. Just player comes, doesn't produce, unhappy. You sign a check for him to go away. Dangerous game.
But it's not exactly setting a precedent. The president's been fired.
Exactly.
It's not something that anyone's going to want to repeat at this club,
That's I mean, at some point, I think, we are at that point where it's just like a lot of this, and I always hate it's a team sport. You always hate to kind of do like, you're the reason. There's a bunch of reasons, but I think we can all agree, like, it's been very troublesome, not just on the pitch, but we know it's created some rifts behind the scenes. Like, there's been a lot going on here where, to your point, whether it's Herdman next year, whether it's another coach, like, we all seem to feel the same way. If you can't get Insigne to play, if you can't get him to buy in, you're doomed. So what are we saying? That you're just basically doomed for the next 2 years?
No, because the team needs to be better around him. The squad needs to be better around him.
Oh, it's tough.
I don't think that they're the worry right now. I think the squad needs to be better.
We could go on and on and on forever. But anyways, doesn't matter. Right now, you've got CF Montreal, where decision day will matter for them. I can't even believe they put themselves in a playoff position. Good for them. Vancouver Whitecaps, guys, the last couple games haven't been looking good. They're holding on to a playoff spot, but it seems to be that collision course for LAFC. We'll talk more about CF Montreal and Vancouver near the end of the week as they get set for some big games. But let's talk about CPL and Forge FC. They needed that win on the weekend. They got it. They officially clinched the CPL Shield. That goes along with the North Star Cup they won last year. That also means, by the way, it was a 1-0 victory over Valor. That also means that they have earned entry into CONCACAF Champions Cup for next year. They're guaranteed as the top seed in the upcoming playoffs. As we know, 1 and 2 face each other, with the winner going straight to the final. The race for that 5th and final playoff spot. Do I have turtles? I just want to, it's like, so slow. Who's gonna
check if you had a pet turtle?
I have dogs. So I have a pet turtle lying around somewhere. I'm not going to take my teddy bear off the shelf. We all know what happened.
Leave that.
Last time I did that.
Leave that right there.
Whole thing came crashing down. But is Forge that much better than the Field?
Yes, but we've said that before, and it doesn't necessarily have a complete bearing on what happens in the playoffs, right? Like, there's a reason that if they do win the double this season, and I think they will be the first team to do it. We were saying similar things about Cavalry last season with a massive gap between them and everyone else at the end of the regular season. 2019, it was similar with Cavalry. They were clearly the best team over the course of the regular season, and then we all remember in 2021. The only year that Forge haven't won the North Star Cup was the other season in which they finished top of the regular season then. So I don't think anyone should be going into the playoffs thinking these guys are unbeatable. This is an insurmountable, mountain to climb, but they're an excellent side. And yeah, if you were asking me who my pick for the North Star Cup is, it would absolutely be this Forge team.
How you feeling, Wheels?
Way to go out on a limb. Yes, Forge, they're the best team by far. The thing is that they're going to play that playoff game at home, and if they win that, they're going to play a final at home. They're 11-1-1 on the season playing at home. They drew CF Montreal there. They beat Toronto FC there. This team is deep at every position. There are options to play in different ways. This team is locked and loaded. I think that there's an outside slim chance that Cavalry can give them a push. Everyone else, I just think that they're miles away right now from Forge. Miles.
Big game team, man. Big game team.
Listen, we're heading into the playoffs, and this whole race is fascinating. But it becomes even more fascinating when coaches make it a submit the ball. And we had ourselves a little spicy exchange between Gonzalez and Mora. So after Gonzalez lost, Atlético Ottawa lost to York United, he was asked if he was concerned about a possible future playoff meeting with the Nine Stripes. Here is what Atlético Ottawa's head coach had to say to that question.
Not at all. No, not at all. Not at all. I think that York is probably the weakest team on the playoffs. Probably they are the weakest team. They don't have so many tools, and the way and the proposal of their football make them be a team that in normal circumstances we have to win them. Mora
responded, it is worth noting that he's like, Didn't we beat them? Haven't we outscored them 7-2? And what's his name again? Carlos? Is that his name again?
Who's that guy?
So just shredded with his response. How are you liking this back and forth, Jordan?
Someone talks smack to me, right? And we just beat their team. I think this is the most comical thing in the world. I'm laughing in your face. I'm like, yeah, I don't really rate this side. I don't mind if we catch them again. And you just lost. You have to hug the loss and just take that with some humility. I don't know what Carlos Gonzalez was doing in that moment. He probably would want that back. And I'll go even a bit deeper with his squad if they're going to go and play York United or anyone in playoffs. This team right now lacks chemistry. We watch them, we analyze them. I look at them very closely. They lack chemistry. They have players that can hurt you, but as a united group, they are not there right now. And guess what? They have about 180 minutes to figure it out. If not, they will have an early exit in the playoffs. This season will be considered a bust. And all this money and time that they've put in, obviously the situation with Torres doesn't help getting an early red card. And this pass as well by Iliadis, just well nonchalant. But shout out to Gmo just putting that in the back of the net. But if Atlético Ottawa don't have a kumbaya moment soon, they are crashing out, finishing fourth and losing in that fourth and fifth game. Remember I said it, mark the date. They have to figure it out now. So I don't think Carlos Gonzalez should be speaking about Benjamin Mora or anything else, but talking about the chemistry within their team. They need to go hunting, camping, whatever it is together, because they're not on the same page.
Wheels, you're not agreeing with this?
I love this stuff. Okay, we need more of this in the Canadian Premier League. Everyone's always so nice to one another. Oh, you're great. You're great. Oh, you're even better. You're the best.
No, we need
Forget
space.
about that. This is professional sport. You're supposed to kick the guy when he's down or kick him when he's up. Do what you have to do to get a result. There's supposed to be animosity. These are rivals. Carlos Gonzalez's side continually lose to York United. He's only ever beat them once. Last year was embarrassing when Ottawa went to York United at the end of the year needing to win. They lost 1-0 in pathetic fashion. So let's get things a little spicy heading into the playoffs. Come out with words like this. You know what? He might be right. York United may be the weakest side entering the playoffs. I think there's a case to be made that they are. I don't think that he's necessarily wrong. The timing of it is what stands out after you just lost to that team at home. And here is my challenge to Carlos Gonzalez and Atlético Ottawa. You have the tools. You have the players. You're a big club with resources and the potential to go on and do something really great here. How about you start playing like it? Stop playing like you're afraid. Stop playing like you just don't want to lose. Go out and try to win this because you have players that are capable of doing just that.
Well, here's the thing, Ollie, because Benjamin Mora said it too with Carlos Gonzalez. Like, he's got great players. And if they're not winning, maybe the problem's somewhere else.
I guess I can see the clock ticking. I don't know if we have Mora's response or we maybe don't have time for it, but it's absolute gold. So you should go and seek that out as well. I kind of think like Carlos Gonzalez, I don't think he is wrong. Like obviously it's a big thing to say. And that's the other thing about it is that it puts massive pressure on him for some of the reasons that Mora then went on to outline. He does have a stacked squad. And if he goes up against York United in the playoffs, which I sincerely hope he does now, you got to win that game after saying that. Like it's a massive claim to make, but there is some truth to the idea. And I kind of give York credit this. I'm not trying to criticize them for it. They are thin right now. Like they've had some injuries, they've had some suspensions. I think they're going to get some of those guys back in the last couple of weeks of the season here. But this is a team relying on the 16-year-olds to make the difference in games right now. So they are limping in, I think, to a certain extent. That they're not quite the team that we saw a few months ago when they were fully fit and firing.
Listen, all I have to say is Benjamin, Carlos, thank you. This is the kind of stuff that we absolutely love. And heading into the playoffs,
More of this. Thank you. I loved it.
But what the thing is what they're slinging at each other, as we're just discussing here, they can all back it up. You can make an argument that what Carlos said was right. You can make an argument what Benjamin said was right. I love it. This is what we want to see. This is the spice we want to see heading into the playoffs. Very, very excited now about these matchups that'll
When
be
was the last
happening.
time there was a war of words like this? Like, we've been waiting for
Mora.
something like this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mora claims he didn't know who Carlos Gonzalez was.
Yeah, he had to double check his
Which
name.
is
What's his
something
name?
else. He's new to the
That's
CPL,
Amazing.
Ollie. He's
Amazing.
new. He's new to the league.
That's
Yeah.
classic. Just grab him by the shoulder, right? Turn it
Who
around
are
so you can
you?
see the name on the back of the jersey and still go, I don't know who you are. That's the move all
Love
the
it.
time. All right, gentlemen, let's get to our Visa Women's Soccer Report. This just coming out today. Christine St. Clair, as we know, gentlemen, did officially announce her retirement from pro soccer. We always wondered, like, what's going to happen next, and will she lend her voice to the NSL? She is part of the majority owner group for Vancouver Rise alongside Greg Kerfoot.
Woo.
So that was announced. She will be not just lending her voice and her face, but she's putting her money where her mouth is, which is something she has been doing, the last few years as well. And she says that she wants young girls to know that they can be players, they can be managers, they can be part of management teams. So she's leading by example, which is great to see for Christine St. Clair. A teammate of hers on the national team who's also retired there, Ollie, though, we know Sophie Schmidt has also extended her deal with Houston, because we're trying to figure out as well, like, how many of these players names as well in the Canadian soccer landscape would be a part of NSL. So, Christine, we kind of get our answer there. Sophie Schmidt might have to wait a little bit because she's not done playing.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see where they go. You know, obviously they've talked a little bit about wanting to bring kind of national team caliber players back to this league, and we know what kind of impacts that can have in terms of awareness of the league and really having those marquee players. You're just kind of wondering, and I'm sure we'll find out, I guess, in the coming months, what kind of profile those players are going to be, because you looked at someone like Sophie Schmidt, who's coming to the end of her career, but is a big name, you know, a massive number of caps, massive legacy and impact in the Canadian women's national team. And that probably would have been the type of player that you thought perfect for an NSL, right? And she's decided to continue in Houston. She's still playing at a high level in Houston. So all credit to her for that. But is there a younger profile of player that you can go for that is still kind of in the national team picture and has that recognition? Are those players going to want to come back to a brand new league as opposed to playing NWSL or in Europe? You know, just what that kind of category of player is, because it isn't that deep of a pool, right, of players who are truly kind of national team relevant that they have to kind of fish in. So it's going to be interesting to see where they go with that.
Other big news in the women's game, another CPL connection there. We know that Rob Gale had moved on over to Portland Thorns. He's their head coach, and now he's brought in another former CPL head coach and coach of the year winner as well, Stephen Hart. What do you make of that, Jordo? As his
Charismatic
assistant,
man.
Yeah.
No,
Great guy.
I have only good things to say about Stephen Hart as well, and just playing against him when I was on York United and him being the head coach at Halifax. I know that when he's in the room, you obviously always know where he is. Just that voice is small, and as I said, the charisma that he carries. So delighted to hear him in this new position.
Yeah, good to see that he's back. All right, let's get now to our tonybet top picks. Wheels, our main man, giving us all the information that we need here with the international window underway. UEFA Nations League matches begin on Thursday. Let's take a look at some of those matches. You got England, Greece, Italy, Belgium, Iceland, Wales, Croatia, Scotland, Spain, Denmark. Take us through the gauntlet there, Wheels.
Well, your beloved Italy is hosting Belgium. I think that it's priced incorrectly. Belgium is way too far out for me, even with, Kevin De Bruyne, not being available. I think that it's worth a punt playing Belgium on the handicap in that game. If there's a game that has a draw written all over it, it's that. Hungary's a very difficult place to go for the Netherlands as well. They're a little bit inconsistent in terms of the way they've been playing. They're back to like Van Dijk and De Ligt have been torched in the media as well. I wouldn't mind making a play on Hungary on the handicap as well. And I got to back my boy Craig Bellamy going to Iceland. As my good friend Oliver Platt said, it's a difficult place to go, Iceland. But I think that Wales are good enough to come away with something. I think that they're galvanized by the new manager. Really like the way that they played in their away travels in the last round of fixtures.
Ollie, how you feeling about England?
Should be fine against Greece, I think. I'm going to take a flyer. I'm going to back Scotland's plus 420. at Croatia for a little shock. I like the upset potential there.
All right.
Tommy on great form right now.
Great
Got
player.
ourselves a lot of footy. Iceland. That's a difficult place to play. There we go, guys. Great show. That's Wheels. That's
Love ice.
Turtle Ollie. I'm Andy. A lot of ice in Iceland. Peace.